My name is Isabella Reyes. For most of my life, I was invisible to the people who should have known me best. I was 34 when it finally happened, when I was no longer just the quiet one, the overlooked daughter, the shadow behind my younger sister's spotlight. I had built something real, something that couldn't be ignored. But I kept it all hidden from them. Because what's the use of telling people who never care to listen? That day, I had been sitting quietly by my sister Sophia's hospital bed. She was pale, exhausted, and pregnant, admitted earlier that afternoon for a sudden spike in blood pressure. Our parents hovered around her, fussing. My mother wrung a damp tissue in her hands. My father barked at nurses over delays. No one noticed I had flown in from Boston just hours ago, still in my professional attire, still carrying the weight of a surgical department on my back. I didn't wear my white coat. I didn't carry my ID badge. I wasn't there as a doctor. Not yet. Sophia's condition wasn't critical, but it was serious. Severe preeclampsia. I knew the prognosis. I had performed surgeries on cases like this. I knew the signs, the dangers, the interventions. But here in this room, I was simply the sister, the second daughter, the one who was always too intense, the one who needed to focus on building a family, not a career. Then, the door opened. A nurse entered, someone I recognized from the surgical wing, and her eyes widened when she saw me. She paused, straightened her posture, and addressed me with a respectful nod. "Good afternoon, Chief Reyes," she said clearly. "I didn't realize you were already here with the patient." Silence fell like glass shattering on tile. I felt all eyes turn to me, my mother, frozen mid-sob, my father, still holding his phone, Sophia, speechless, and just like that, everything changed. I didn't speak. I just nodded once, professionally. The nurse, bless her, continued calmly, "Dr. Bennett is on her way to consult. We'll continue monitoring Mrs. Collins in the meantime." Still, no one said a word. Their expressions were unreadable, confused, stunned, maybe even afraid. They had just learned something about me, something they never bothered to ask. I stood there, not triumphant, not smug, just still. Because after decades of silence, of belittlement, of being told I was too driven, too obsessed, not built for this, they had just heard the title they thought I could never earn. Chief of Surgery. And this was only the beginning. I was 7 years old the first time I decided I wanted to be a doctor. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No one collapsed in front of me. No life was saved by a miracle. It was a waiting room. My grandfather had just been taken into heart surgery. I sat on a vinyl chair with my feet swinging above the floor, flipping through a children's anatomy book. And then the surgeon walked in. He wasn't tall. He wasn't loud. But he spoke with quiet authority, and every adult in the room leaned forward when he spoke. In that moment, he looked like a superhero wrapped in a white coat. I remember gripping my book tighter, whispering to myself, "I want to be him." On the way home, I said it out loud. "I want to be a doctor." My father chuckled from the driver's seat, eyes on the road. "That's a nice dream, ISA," he said. "But being a doctor is very hard. Not everyone is cut out for it." Beside me in the back seat, my younger sister Sophia, only 5, declared, "I want to be a doctor too." My mother reached back and touched her knee, laughing. "Well, of course, darling. You've got the brains for it." That was the first time I felt it, that shift in the air, like I'd been gently pushed into the background of my own story. Sophia was the golden child. She had the curls, the smile, the charisma. I was steady, quiet, practical, invisible. Sophia got birthday parties with ponies and pink balloons. I got store-bought cake and a candle stuck in a bowl of ice cream. When I brought home straight A's, my father would nod without looking up. "Good job, ISA." When Sophia pulled her grades up from CS to BS, the family went out for dinner. I learned not to expect applause. Instead, I built my own world, a world of pages and pipettes. I watched medical documentaries late at night with the volume turned low. I dissected frogs in the garage. I checked out medical journals from the school library when no one was watching. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just loved it. The only adult who ever saw me clearly back then was Mrs. Calder, my high school biology teacher. She caught me staying after class one day, peering through the microscope long after the bell rang. "You've got a surgeon's hands," she said. "Precise. Calm. You see what others miss." It was the first time anyone had told me I was good at this. She mentored me, gave me books I wasn't supposed to have access to. She pushed me to apply to Harvard, wrote me a recommendation letter that made me cry. When the acceptance letter arrived, I showed it to my parents with trembling hands. My father frowned at the envelope. "That's going to be expensive," I say. "Are you sure?" "I got a partial scholarship," I said. My mother sighed. "That helps. But you know, maybe community college is a better starting point. It's safer." They paid the difference, with conditions, with constant reminders. Don't take on too much. Most people don't make it through med school. Have a backup plan. Every holiday, every call home was the same. Still doing that doctor thing. Still locked in your books. You need a life, sweetheart. I stopped telling them about my achievements. They didn't ask, so I didn't offer. I walked into Harvard alone, and every step forward, I carried a silent vow. Someday, they will know who I am. They will know what I built, even if I have to build it brick by invisible brick. By sophomore year, Harvard felt more like home than Savannah ever had. I lived in the basement of the science library. I missed parties, skipped football games, and volunteered for every research rotation available. I wasn't chasing grades. I was chasing mastery. Every lab result, every anatomical drawing, every 4 a.m. study session, it was sacred to me. And yet, back home, the narrative was different. Isabella's still stuck in the books. My mother would tell relatives over the phone. We just hope she finds balance. Sophia, on the other hand, was lighting up their world with updates from her Instagram feed. She was doing yoga on cliffs, smiling in coffee shops, volunteering at clinics with perfectly filtered photos. When she said she wanted to pursue medicine too, my parents were thrilled. A family of doctors, my father beamed. "You've got the Reyes grit, just like me." He was in real estate. They threw Sophia a party when she got into Rutgers. Balloons, champagne, extended family. I was there too, leaning against the wall with a cup of flat soda, listening to an uncle say, "Maybe you and Sophia will open a practice together someday." I smiled and nodded. My mother, who overheard, added, "Oh, Isabella's still figuring things out. Sophia's always had such clarity." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. When I was accepted into a highly competitive summer research program, I told my mom during dinner. She showed me Sophia's latest post instead. "She's already getting hands-on experience," she said. "She just connects with people better." As if my work, my 90-hour weeks, my journals, my surgical simulations, was somehow inferior. As if being liked was the goal. So I stopped telling them. No updates, no emails, no mentions of the fellowship I won, or the letter of recommendation from Dr. Eleanor Grant, a world-renowned neurosurgeon who took me under her wing and whispered, "You're made for this." While Sophia posted pictures holding stethoscopes, I was assisting in actual procedures. While she blogged about the pressure of medical school, I was thriving in it. But my parents couldn't see the difference. Or maybe they didn't want to. At a Thanksgiving dinner, Sophia announced she was taking a break from med school to explore other passions. She had failed 2 key courses, But the story was rewritten quickly. "She's wise," my father said. "She knows when to step back." When a cousin asked about me, my mother sighed. "Isabella's still pushing herself. We worry, of course. She's always been intense." I excused myself to the kitchen before the teas came. They were rewriting my life in real time, shaping it into something small enough to understand, small enough to dismiss. I stood at the sink, gripping the counter, willing myself not to break. Not here. Not now. Let them believe what they want. Because one day, I told myself, I will not need them to see me. The world will. By the time I completed my residency, I had stopped calling home altogether. Our conversations had grown shorter, quieter, filled with long pauses and superficial concern. "How's the hospital?" my mother would ask. "Busy, but good," I'd answer. "You should really take a break sometime. Go on a date. Don't burn yourself out." The implication never changed. My success was something temporary, something dangerous, something I'd regret. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just surviving. I was soaring. I had been published multiple times. I had pioneered a variation of a minimally invasive valve replacement technique that was now being adopted across teaching hospitals. I'd given talks at medical conferences. Senior surgeons were requesting me for complex procedures. Residents looked to me for guidance. And yet, in the Reyes family group chat, all anyone talked about was Sophia's wellness blog. She had pivoted into lifestyle coaching. My parents proudly shared links to her meditation videos and juice cleanse guides. When she got her first 1,000 followers, they sent a cake to her apartment. When I received the Northeast Cardiothoracic Fellowship Award, a distinction granted to only 3 surgeons in the country, my mother texted back a thumbs-up emoji. That was the moment I made a decision. I would stop trying to make them proud. Their pride was a currency I could no longer spend. I had built something real, something no family toast or fridge magnet could represent. Then came the email. It was from the board of St. Aurora Medical Center, one of the top hospitals on the East Coast. They wanted to speak to me about a leadership role. At first, I thought it was for a department chair. But as I read further, my breath caught. Chief of surgery. At 34. It was unheard of. I flew to Boston under complete confidentiality. I presented my vision for patient-centered innovation, interdisciplinary collaboration, and surgical education. I met with board members, sat for 2 intense panels, and toured the surgical wing with the current chief, who would be retiring in 4 months. When the offer came, I was alone in my apartment, watching the city lights flicker against the skyline. The hospital director called me personally. "We believe in your vision, Dr. Reyes," he said. "We believe you are the future of surgical leadership." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in silence, the phone pressed to my ear, and let the weight of the moment settle on me. I had done it. I had become undeniable. I thought about calling my parents, about telling them the news before the press release. But the thought passed. Not out of anger. Not even out of pride. Just peace. This win was mine. Untouched. Untarnished. Unexplained. I decided I would tell them later, maybe over dinner. Maybe when I visited home. But fate, it seems, had its own timeline. Because just 1 week before I officially stepped into my new role, my sister collapsed, and the ambulance took her straight to St. Aurora. Straight to me. The emergency call came in the middle of a departmental budget meeting. My assistant knocked, wide-eyed. "Dr. Reyes, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's an urgent call. It's about your sister." My heart dropped. I stepped out, answered, and immediately heard my mother's voice, frantic and tear-soaked. "Sophia's collapsed. Her blood pressure, the baby." I didn't wait to hear more. She was being brought to my hospital. Out of all the hospitals in Boston, the ambulance had chosen St. Aurora Medical Center. the place where I now held the highest surgical authority. It felt surreal, cruel, and inevitable all at once. I rushed to the ER, logged into the system, and found her name under high-risk obstetrics. Diagnosis: severe preeclampsia. Stable, for now. When I arrived outside her room, I paused. I wasn't wearing my white coat, no badge, just a fitted navy blouse and press trousers. Professional, but nondescript. I could already hear my mother's voice through the door. I don't understand why they are making us wait. The doctor should have been here by now. I stepped inside. Sophia was lying on the hospital bed, pale but alert. My father stood by the window, scrolling through his phone. My mother sat beside the bed, clutching Sophia's hand tightly. They barely looked up when I entered. No relief, no urgency, just a passing glance. "Oh, Isabella, you made it. We were just about to order dinner." I crossed the room and stood by the bed. "How are you feeling, Soph?" She let out a dramatic sigh. "Terrible. They said my blood pressure's dangerously high. They are worried about the baby." I nodded slowly, glancing at her monitor. "It's serious, but this hospital has one of the best maternal-fetal medicine teams in the country." My father frowned. "And how would you know that?" He wasn't being malicious. He just couldn't fathom that I might know something he didn't. "I keep up with rankings," I said lightly. My mother sniffed. "Well, I hope they send someone good. Sophia needs the best care available." I smiled faintly. "They will." Minutes passed. Sophia groaned about the room temperature. My mother asked for water. My father checked his watch repeatedly and muttered about inefficiency. No one asked why I had come from the staff elevator. No one noticed I was checking her vitals with the precision of a surgeon. Then the door opened. A nurse entered, young, efficient, tablet in hand. She glanced up and saw me. Her eyes widened in recognition. I gave her the smallest shake of my head, a silent "not yet." She nodded subtly, then turned back to Sophia. "Vitals are holding steady. Dr. Bennett will be in shortly." My mother exhaled sharply. "Finally! We've been waiting for hours." 73 minutes, the nurse corrected gently. "And Dr. Bennett is one of our top specialists." "She'd better be," my mother muttered. The nurse stepped back, gave me one more glance, and left. The room fell silent again. I stayed out the window, watching the clouds move over the city. Somewhere beyond that skyline was the life I had built, the office with my name on the door, the staff that looked to me for leadership, the surgical wing I had redesigned from the ground up. And yet here, in this room, I was still just the forgotten daughter, still the afterthought, still invisible. Until the door opened again. Nurse Jackson entered, and behind her, a young resident I recognized from obstetrics. They walked to Sophia's chart. Then the nurse turned, saw me again, and straightened. She walked directly toward me, and then, in front of my entire family, she bowed slightly. "Good afternoon, Chief Reyes," she said clearly. "I didn't realize you were already with the patient. Dr. Bennett is on her way to consult." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Because finally, they had heard the truth. And there was no one hearing it. For a moment, time stood still. My sister's mouth dropped open, words frozen behind parted lips. My father, who had just returned from a phone call, stopped in the doorway, his eyes wide. The phone slipped slightly in his hand. My mother's gaze ping-ponged between the nurse and me, her confusion settling into disbelief. "There must be a mistake," she said with a nervous laugh. "My daughter works at a hospital in New York. She's not. She can't be." Nurse Jackson blinked, puzzled but professional. "Dr. Isabella Reyes has been our chief of surgery for 3 months now, one of the youngest ever appointed to the position." No one spoke. All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly, smoothing the front of my blouse with calm hands. "Thank you, Nurse Jackson," I said. "Yes, I'm familiar with the case." The nurse gave a respectful nod and returned to Sophia's bedside. The young resident, Dr. Patel, continued checking vitals with admirable composure. "We'll keep monitoring Mrs. Collins's blood pressure. Readings are elevated but appear to be stabilizing." "Good," I replied. "Please keep me updated on any changes." It was only then I turned back to face my family. Sophia was still staring, the lines of shock now furrowed deep between her brows. Her voice, usually quick with commentary, had vanished. My father stepped inside cautiously, standing beside my mother, his posture suddenly unsure. "Chief of Surgery," my mother whispered. "But you never said anything." I met her eyes and answered quietly, "Would it have mattered if I had?" Before she could respond, the door opened once more. Dr. Bennett entered. Tall, composed, experienced, she filled the room with quiet authority. Her gaze scanned us all, but when her eyes landed on me, they softened. "Dr. Reyes," she said warmly, "I didn't expect to see you today." "Family emergency," I replied. "This is my sister, Sophia Collins." Dr. Bennett's eyebrows rose in recognition. "I see." She turned to Sophia with a calm, reassuring tone. "Mrs. Collins, I've reviewed your file. The preeclampsia is moderate, but we're monitoring closely. We'll be keeping you here for observation until your blood pressure stabilizes." Sophia nodded weakly, her voice still absent. Then Dr. Bennett turned back to me. "Given your sister's status and the current readings, I'm considering starting a magnesium sulfate drip as a seizure precaution. Would you agree?" The entire room held its breath. She had justified to me, in front of my family, a full attending physician asking my opinion. I glanced at the screen one more time. "Yes," I said clearly, "that's appropriate. And I'd recommend continuous fetal monitoring for the next 24 hours. "Exactly what I was thinking," Dr. Bennett said, already making notes. "I'll enter the order now." And then my father found his voice. "Wait just a minute," he said, stepping forward. "Are you saying Isabella is making medical decisions for her own sister? Isn't that some kind of conflict of interest?" Dr. Bennett raised an eyebrow, surprised by the interruption. "Mr. Reyes, your daughter is one of the most respected surgeons in the country. While obstetrics isn't her specialty, her opinion is always valued. However, I am the attending physician. Final decisions remain mine." Then she turned to me again, calm and composed. "Will you be staying for the treatment discussion?" I met my father's eyes. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to hear the full plan." More staff began filtering in. A new nurse, a technician, a junior fellow. Each one acknowledged me with quiet deference. "Dr. Reyes." "Chief." My mother's silence grew heavier with each passing second. Then, slowly, she reached for my hand. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, voice thin, uncertain. I gently pulled my hand away. "When have you ever truly wanted to hear about my success, Mom?" Her face flushed. "That's not fair. We've always supported you." From the bed, Sophia gave a small scoff. All eyes turned to her. "Oh, come on," she said. Her voice was hoarse, but steady now. "We all know Isabella was never the favorite. You two made that pretty clear." My father bristled. "Now is not the time for family drama, Sophia." He turned to me, attempting a smile. "We've always been proud of you, ISA. You know that. We just worry." The performance would have worked a few years ago, but not anymore. Not here. Not now. I stood rooted in my place, surrounded by the quiet hum of monitors and the respect of a hospital that knew me. "No," I said calmly. "You weren't proud of me. You were waiting for me to fail." Dr. Bennett, ever the professional, sensed the tension instantly. "I'll check back in 1 hour," she said gently, giving Sophia a reassuring smile. "The nurse will begin the magnesium sulfate shortly." She exited the room with quiet grace. As the door closed behind her, silence returned. Thick, charged. My father's jaw worked back and forth as he searched for something to say. My mother stayed at the floor, twisting her wedding ring. Sophia lay still in the bed, her eyes unreadable. Finally, my father spoke, arms crossed. "That's ridiculous. We've always supported your interests." I turned to him slowly. "My interests?" I echoed. "You mean my career? The one you told everyone was falling apart? The one Mom suggested I give up yesterday to focus on building a family?" My mother looked up, her face pink with shame. "We didn't know you were so successful." "That's exactly the point," I said. "You never asked. You never wanted to know. I let the truth settle between us like a blade. You decided years ago who I was, and even when the evidence changed, you held on to that version because it was easier." Sophia's voice broke the silence next. She looked up from the stiff white blanket that covered her. "Well, you could have told us," she said, her tone softer now. "You could have told us you were this big shot doctor. It's not like we wouldn't have been happy for you." I looked at her, really looked, for the first time, not as a rival or the golden child, but as a woman. I saw the fear in her eyes, the weight of carrying a child, the cracks in the mask she'd worn her whole life. And then I felt it. Not anger, not resentment, but something else. Compassion. "I'm not a big shot," I said quietly. "I'm chief of surgery at one of the top hospitals in the country. I've published over 30 medical papers. I've developed surgical techniques now taught in universities across the U.S. I looked from one face to the next. Mother, father, sister, and none of you knew. Because none of you ever really wanted to know who I actually am." They didn't argue. They couldn't. There was nothing left to say. Just then, the door opened again. Dr. Patel returned with a nurse to set up the magnesium drip. I stepped back, giving them space to work. As the four was secured and vitals rechecked, I moved to the corner of the room, watching, waiting, and in that moment, I realized I had done what I'd promised myself under the stars as a girl. I had become undeniable, not through their approval, not in their words, but in the silence that followed truth. The following 5 days passed in quiet recalibration. Sophia's condition stabilized. The baby remained safe. She was kept under careful monitoring, and every time I walked into her room, the energy shifted, not tense, exactly, but cautious, as if everyone was still trying to absorb the truth they'd been too late to see. I visited daily, sometimes in scrubs, sometimes in slacks and a blazer, depending on my surgical load. I brought Sophia books. I answered her questions about the baby's health. I listened, not as a doctor, not even as a sister desperate for recognition, just as me. On the 3rd day, she surprised me. I had dropped by during my lunch break, still holding my clipboard. She looked up from a magazine and said, "You must be really good at what you do." I paused mid-step. "Why do you say that?" She shrugged. "Because everyone here practically stands straighter when you walk in. They respect you. I can feel it." I smiled, just slightly. "I work hard." She studied me in a way she never had before. "You always did," she said. Then added, almost reluctantly, "I was jealous of you, you know." That stopped me. "Jealous of me?" She nodded. "Yeah. I mean, Mom and Dad made me feel like I was the center of the world. I got the spotlight. But deep down, I always knew you were doing something real. Something important. I was faking it most of the time. Smiling for cameras. Posting for clicks. You were out here building something they couldn't give you. I'll take away. She placed a hand gently on her stomach. I never had that. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. And for the first time, our roles shifted. We weren't competing anymore. We were two women, shaped by the same family in different, damaging ways, finally seeing each other clearly. But if rebuilding something with Sophia came naturally, my parents were another story entirely. My father tried to rewrite history. It's not that we didn't believe in you, he said one morning, catching me alone in the hallway. I just pushed you harder because I knew you could take it. I didn't answer. He smiled as if I'd accepted the olive branch. But I hadn't. My mother was a pendulum. One moment, she'd beam with pride as I introduced her to colleagues during a hallway encounter. The next, she'd corner me in my office. "We're your family," she whispered. "Families shouldn't keep secrets." I kept my voice calm. Families shouldn't make their children feel like they're never enough, either. She flinched. Tears welled in her eyes. "We never meant to hurt you." "You didn't have to mean it," I replied. "But every time I accomplished something, you found a way to reduce it, to make it smaller. Eventually I stopped telling you, because it hurt too much." She wiped her cheek, mascara smudging slightly. "I was afraid," she whispered, "that medicine would take everything from you." "It didn't," I said. "It gave me everything." And that was the heart of it. They hadn't doubted me because they feared I would fail. They had doubted me because they feared I would succeed, that I would outgrow the version of myself they were comfortable with. And I had. By the time Sophia was discharged, with a plan for regular monitoring and a cautious but healthy prognosis, I had already drawn a line in the sand. They could enter my world, but only on my terms. That meant no diminishing smiles, no backhanded compliments, no pretending they'd always believed in me. The girl who once cried over their silence was gone. In her place stood a woman, and she wasn't asking for permission anymore. 6 months after Sophia's hospitalization, I invited my family to the annual fundraising gala at St. Aurora Medical Center. I almost didn't, but something in me, maybe the last remnants of that little girl who once begged for recognition, wanted them to see. Not just hear about my work through headlines or hallway whispers, but witness it, feel it, see the woman I had become. The gala was held in the grand atrium, transformed that night by golden light and cascading floral arrangements. A string quartet played near the stage. Waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays and champagne flutes. Guests in gowns and tuxedos buzzed between tables decorated with surgical tools repurposed as elegant centerpieces. My idea, of course. I arrived early, as always. Hair-pinned, navy satin dress, minimal makeup, confident, present. My parents arrived just before the opening speech. My father wore a suit too crisp to be comfortable. My mother clutched a beaded clutch like a lifeline. Sophia came in last, her figure still soft from pregnancy, but her eyes steady. They found their seats at the reserved family table near the stage. I spotted them, nodded once, and returned to my place at the head table beside hospital board members and senior physicians. The event began with speeches from our director, a few major donors, and 2 patients whose lives had been saved through pioneering surgeries at St. Aurora. Then came my turn. The director took the podium and introduced me. Dr. Isabella Reyes, our chief of surgery, has not only led this institution into new frontos but has become a national voice in advancing minimally invasive cardiac procedures. Her leadership, innovation, and tireless dedication have transformed not only this hospital, but the very definition of what's possible. Applause erupted. As I stepped onto the stage, I looked out over the room. My parents were still, eyes wide, faces unreadable. And for once, I didn't care. I delivered my speech. Clear, warm, focused on patients, on the team, on the vision of care that respected both science and soul. When I stepped down, people rose to shake my hand. Former patients hugged me. Board members offered congratulations. Colleagues raised glasses in my direction. My father looked stunned. My mother dabbed her eyes. Later, as the evening wound down, my father approached quietly. "I had no idea," he said. "The way they talk about you here, you're really changing lives." I didn't offer a smile, just nodded. "That's why I do it," I said. It was never about proving anything. It was about becoming who I was meant to be. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He didn't need to. It wasn't a full reconciliation. Not yet, but it was a start. And this time, it began with truth. Over the next months, we began to rebuild, not on fiction, not on revisionist memory, but on real bricks. Honest ones. Sophia, to everyone's surprise, including her own, found something new in herself after giving birth. She began volunteering with advocacy groups for high-risk pregnancies. She stopped curating her life for approval and started sharing it for purpose. My parents still made mistakes. Old habits die hard. But the tone shifted. The disbelief in their voices faded. The respect, slowly, cautiously, began to grow. 1 year after Sophia's hospitalization, I stood in my office at St. Aurora, looking out at the Charles River. My name gleamed on the frosted glass. Dr. Isabella Reyes, Chief of Surgery. The sunlight caught the letters just right that morning. Inside, the room was filled with papers, textbooks, flowers from grateful patients, and a framed photograph from the gala, a candid shot of me laughing with 2 surgical interns. For once, I didn't look tired. I looked alive. I had just come from an early morning operation, another successful valve reconstruction, and had 15 minutes before my next consult. A knock at the door. It was my aunt, my father's sister, Margot. She entered with a knowing smile. "They used to say you were too quiet," she said, closing the door behind her. "Turns out you were just busy building an empire." I smiled. "Brick by brick." She nodded approvingly. "Good. Don't let them forget it." That afternoon, I held a session with a small group of residents and young surgeons, mostly women, many of them first generation. Some had families who cheered them on. Others had parents who, like mine, still didn't fully understand who their daughters were becoming. I told them my story, not the dramatic parts, not the titles or awards, just the quiet truth. I told them how I built my excellence brick by brick, in silence, in shadows, in solitude. How sometimes the people who love you don't see you, not because you're not shining, but because they've trained themselves not to look. And how that's not your burden to carry. Your validation can't depend on them, I said. Even if they're your blood. Especially if they're your blood. What you build with your own hands will speak for itself. They listened, wide-eyed, and I realized I wasn't just healing patients anymore. I was creating legacies. Later that week, I attended Sunday dinner. Sophia had insisted. She said it would be different this time. And it was. My father introduced me to a neighbor with a new tone in his voice. "This is our daughter Isabella. She's a surgeon, head of her department, actually." I waited for the disbelief, but it didn't come. Still, when the conversation shifted back to trivial things, like Sophia's new garden project, I quietly picked up my coat and excused myself. My mother followed me to the door. "Leaving so soon?" I nodded. "I have an early surgery." She reached out, then stopped herself. "We're proud of you," I say. I paused. "I know," I said, "but I didn't build all this to make you proud. I built it because I had to." She looked down. I didn't need her to understand. I just needed her to respect it. Over time, things softened. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough. Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy 3 months later. At the welcome dinner, She pulled me aside while he slept against her chest. "I want him to know who you are," she said softly. "Not just your title, but who you are." I smiled. "And maybe," she added, "you can explain to him what a cardiothoracic surgeon actually does. Because honestly, I still have no idea." I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that didn't carry a single ounce of pain. "It's a date." And in that moment, I understood. The greatest success wasn't the title, the salary, or the applause. It was becoming someone who didn't need to be seen. To know that she'd never been invisible. Not to herself. Not ever again.